you know, it depends. Where we go depends on our, you know, how far along we are in our transitions.
And what state you're in.
And what state you're in. As far as, you know, generally a post-op transsexual would, you know, go to the...
yeah, you follow the path of your genitals.
The path of your genitals, right. So it is conceivable. I mean, I believe in this state, if I had to go to prison, I'd be going to a women's prison. But
not in Massachusetts.
But yeah, I just can't imagine throwing somebody like myself or you guys into a men's prison. That would
You'd end up in segregation.
Right.
You'd end up isolated.
The protective custody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to ask you, what happens to people like us, members of the GLBT community,
yeah,
when they
gay and trans folks,
when they wind up in prison? I mean, that's
well, there's a case now in Boston in the federal court where I can't think of his name. Jack knows his name, and the court had ordered the Department of Corrections to give him the operation. And from what I understand, I'm not really familiar with all the details of it, but I guess for like a 2-year period, a tube has to be in there somewhere before they can do the operation.
There's that I'm not.
I don't know. It depends.
Because this guy was like at the point where now he was ready for the operation. Mm-hmm. He did the hormone therapy stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There is post-surgery. You wind up with a catheter for a while, and you wind up with stents.
Okay, that's probably what it is.
Stents and things, but.
And he was at that point, and the court had ordered him to do this.
Wow.
And DOC, at the last moment, reneged.
Because of course, if the DOC does it, then it's taxpayer money paying for it, right?
Right, and the court ordered the state to pay for it, to do it.
Right.
You know, because this individual's mental state and whatnot, and all the psychiatric stuff said, yeah, go.
Right.
Right. They all said he should have the operation.
Right.
Right. And
DOC
initially was doing it, and then at the last moment, for whatever reasons, political, whatever, backed off.
Right. So it's a medically necessary procedure if you're transsexual to align your body with your mind. So the legal argument seems to be that withholding it is cruelty.
Absolutely.
And I would tend to agree with that. But in the outside world, the insurance community hasn't recognized. They're still working on catching up with that.
And so, I mean, that's actually a pretty progressive view for the state and the penal system there, considering that in some parts of the country, you're lucky if you're allowed to continue your hormones while you're in prison.
Mm.
Well, he lucked up in that he got a good judge. He got a judge that had compassion and looked at the situation from a judge's point of view without the politics.
Right.
And he evaluated the psychiatric reports, and he looked at the whole picture,
right,
and said, no, you got to do this, you're going to pay for this. This individual is entitled for that type of treatment. It's medical treatment.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, hepatitis C or HIV, you treat me for it.
right.
Right. And I mean, I've heard statistics, I think we've all heard statistics from various sources that I remember, I forget which source it was, that said half of our community reports a suicide attempt by the age of 20. Eventually, a third of us succeed. So putting a person in that kind of situation in prison and no hope of ever actually getting the surgery, that seems to me to be a recipe for suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus, you stigmatize the individual in the prison environment.
Right.
Because now, what do you do with this individual? And like we were discussing before, in the prison environment, the bottom of the ladder, I mean, there is a pecking order.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And at the bottom of the ladder is the child molesters.
Mm-hmm.
All right? I mean, they have a very tough time inside of a prison. People spit on them, set their cells on fire, beat them up, because, people just don't like people that mess with children. And they're in that category. Rapist is the next level up. All right? And then your homosexuals and whatnot, they're farther up on the list. All right? And it depends upon the prison and the different parts of the country you're in. Like in Massachusetts, in Walpole, like we were discussing with Jack,
Right.
you don't see rapes, men raping other men, because rape is rape. And that's a skin beef. You're a skinner. And that's the attitude in Massachusetts toward people, men who rape men. You're a skinner. You're looked down on. You're in the lower part of the ladder. All right? Then you have other problems. Is individual comes into the prison and there's no work, particularly in Walpole. There's not enough work for people to get money to go work in the industries and whatnot. So individuals, particularly homosexuals, sell their body. All right. Now, some people say, "Oh, this guy's exploiting this guy's condition." That's really not true. The individuals that's selling his body is doing exploiting. And it's not fair to call it that. And then you have the situation like in Massachusetts, you have over 900 people doing first degree and second degree life. And then you have guys that have sentences that like they might as well be doing life there, all right? They're in there so long. And who's going to live a sexless existence? All right? So you have your homosexual relationships going on inside the prison system. All right? And in Massachusetts, Norfolk prison is like a community kind of prison. And you got like rooms versus cells, right? And you got a lot of lifers there. So relationships develop, And then in some states, particularly within the federal system, you end up with situations where people fight over queens.
Wow.
People can get stabbed, get seriously injured. And what happens, like now with the feds, they have an institution, I'm not sure if they're using the same one now, because now they get 117 prisons. But at one time, Sandstone, it's up in near the Canadian border area, most of your queens were put there. The most feminine ones that you put them in a state prison environment, and people are going to fight for this.
Good evening, you're on nlcTrans.
Oh, hi, this is Devin. Me and my roommate, he's a transgender. I'm just a female. We're just here listening.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for listening. So, questions for us tonight?
Oh, no, not really. I guess I came in the middle of y'all were talking about queens in the prison or something.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about what happens to people like us in prison. God forbid any of us wind up in prison, but...
Oh, yeah, it's the same for real feminine gay men as well.
Right. It's not a good place to be, not a place I want to be.
Well, it's not a place for anyone to be.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work for anybody, but the administrations have, sex between men in a prison is against the law. All right, so they're caught between a rock and a hard place. When I first went to Concord in 1960, if I started busting balls in the institution, the deputy would call me into his office. And he would tell me in no uncertain terms, Dilello, get yourself a kid and settle down, or I'm going to bury you in segregation.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this was yet. Now, Concord, there was a lot of that in Concord. And like other prisons, they would push the guys of that nature toward Concord. And the only thing that would stop you from getting there, it depends upon your security level. If you're an escape risk, then you're not going to Concord. You're going to stay in Walpole. And whatever that consequences of that means, that's what you're living with. But Massachusetts wasn't really that bad. And all the time that I've done time in there has not been that bad. Southern states are a lot worse.
Right.
I mean, there's some serious rape and stuff. And in the federal prison, there were situations where Lewisburg, this guy sold his kid for $100 to the Mexicans who put the kid